Hi, everybody. My name is William Miner. I'm the managing partner of the DLA Piper Washington, D.C. office, and I'm very glad to welcome all of you to our office today. We are thrilled to have Cously in the building. The firm has had a long relationship, as many of you know, with Cously, particularly through our DC partners, Jim Blanchard and Rick Newcomb, who have been in leadership positions for as many years as I can remember learning about Cously. I was among those who have made the journey to Cleveland for conferences. Quite a few of us in the DLA Piper family have participated in those, and it has been a wonderful thing. I'm really just here to welcome you, but I do want to acknowledge a couple other folks real quickly. One is Ambassador Mark Grossman, who is sitting right back here and is with our wonderful strategic partner, the Cohen Group, which is co-located here in our building just upstairs on the second floor. We have a great relationship with the Cohen Group on a wide variety of fronts, and we value that. Also want to recognize a colleague who's visiting us from our Copenhagen office, Per Vestergaard Peterson, who I just spoke to there, who I know is on a panel later on today, and you'll hear more, and there'll be more introductions. There are many other friends of the firm in the room, so I'm going to stop here. But I did have one administrative request. If you're looking for a CLE credit, there is a form, an evaluation form that I think is available in the back. Be sure to pick it up. There's a code on it that you'll need to get credit. I think that's all you need for the CLE. So with that, I want to turn it over to Steve Petrus, Director of Cously. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 2025 experts meeting of the Canada-United States Law Institute. I'm the U.S. National Director, and on behalf of myself and Kai Carmody, our Canadian National Director, we're welcoming you to this year's expert meeting. So first of all, I want to give a special thanks to DLA Piper for hosting this event at this outstanding location. It's a great relationship we've had over the years, and as just been mentioned, we have some very stalwart members of our institute. Jim Blanchard, our U.S. co-chair, Richard Newcomb, and newest member, Lauren McNeil. Where's Lauren? She's in there. There she is. So, by the way, if you like this conference, you have to give credit to Rick Newcomb because he came up with the conference idea. I do want to say that although we're here at DLA Piper, the remarks and the content of this conference are not to be attributed to DLA Piper. If you want to attribute them to anyone, attribute them to the Canada-United States Law Institute. Also, I want to thank our sponsors. In addition to DLA Piper, we also have Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, Michigan State University and its Canadian Studies Center, and McInnes Cooper, a Canadian law firm. I also want to tell you that 2026 will be the 50th anniversary of the Canada-United States Law Institute. We started in 1976, and we have our annual conference April 16 and 17, and although things tend to change and topics vary as you get closer to conference dates, our present title is Putting Aside Politics, the Challenging and Changing Relationship Between Two Great Neighbors. So if you're interested, April 16 and 17. At this time, I also want to say thank you to Steve Paley, our managing director, who has worked behind the scenes to make all this happen, both technically and through our communications. Thank you, Steve. So at this time, we're going to have an introduction from our U.S. co-chair of our executive committee, Jim Blanchard. Now, Jim Blanchard goes way back with our institute. He started when Henry King, the youngest prosecutor at Nuremberg, was in the position that I hold today, and he joined us. And he's been a stalwart member. And if you don't know Jim, He's an expert on just about any topic in the world, including Canada, because he's a former U.S. representative from Michigan. He's a former governor of Michigan. He's a former U.S. ambassador to Canada. So Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to get close to the microphone because we're online and there are 50-plus lawyers who are following this from around, particularly the Midwest. And so I'm told to get close to the mic so they can hear. That's what I'm doing, but I don't want the feedback, right? I'm watching Janet Blanchard. Is it bouncing off here? Is that it? Not yet. All right. Anyway, the Canada-U.S. Law Institute has really been a fascinating organization. It's the only organization that deals cross-border issues with Canada and the U.S. There are a lot of other Canadian business groups and others that do good work, but this is the only one that deals with law and it allows for the content to be used in terms of continuing legal education. This is their annual journal. And so this conference will be published. Everyone who speaks and participates, it'll be published. The speakers will get a chance to edit things so that it's all accurate. But just so you know, this is a serious law school, Case Western Reserve. I did not go to Case Western Law School. I feel like I should be an honorary alumni at this point. I went to University of Minnesota Law School. My buddy, Gary Bula, went to Harvard Law School, but it's a small little place in Boston. They don't play football much anymore, but anyway, except against Yale, right? Anyway, we had in 2022, we had a conference on cooperation in the Arctic. In Canada, U.S., Canada more than the U.S. is an Arctic country. So is Denmark, i.e. Greenland as well. And the U.S. is too with Alaska. So we're Arctic cooperators really, and this kind of evolved from that. And with climate change, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, challenges to NATO, the need for critical materials and minerals and renewable energy and regular energy, I think the topic of Greenland has become more and more relevant to those who are involved with U.S. politics, U.S. foreign policy, Canadian politics, Canadian foreign policy. And it all relates to our relationship with Denmark, really, and Greenland, in terms of strengthening NATO at a very critical time. So that gives you the basis for the fact that my partner, Rick Newcomb, decided we ought to feature Greenland in this year's conference in Washington, D.C. I think you've heard the acknowledgments of the sponsors. I want to simply add that I want to thank Naz Gocek, Naz Gocek back there, for working with us, with the Cohen Group, and with Ambassador Mark Grossman. And again, Lauren McNeil in our firm of DLA Piper, and others. We also have here some representatives. First, we really got to thank the Danish Embassy and the Greenland office. We could not do this without you. You are a valuable partner to both the United States and Canada, and will always be that as far as we're concerned. In fact, I wear my outfit here is not because I've become a MAGA Democrat. It's because these are the colors of the Danish flag. So, which I was made sure I double checked with Lori Fulton about that. Anyway, we do have representatives from Congresswoman Haley Stevens' office, Justin German, Chief of Staff. We have a representative from Congresswoman Kristen Rivet. Peter Bukovich is here. Where is Peter? Thank you for coming. Also, I think Rachel Klein from Congresswoman Hillary Skolton's office. These are all three members of Congress from Michigan. Again, if you're in Michigan, you follow things closely with Canada, whether it's trade, tourism, manufacturing, autos, you name it, Great Lakes water quality. So our people in Michigan have always held Canada in really a special, special place in their hearts, as we do today. And then again, Stephen Paley, thank you again for your work. Stephen is not only our manager, he teaches law both at Case Western and where else? Albany. And he also works at Charles Schwab. So, I mean, I don't know how you, with a young family, I don't know how you do it all, but we thank you for your work. Now we're going to get to the content of this program. We have some really good people lined up, and I'm going to start with someone with whom we would not be able to run this conference, but for her leadership and help, and that's Ambassador Lori Fulton, former ambassador, as we all are, but we always call ourselves ambassador. She's been active in diplomatic activities for the last, I don't know, 2 decades maybe, or more. Before that, public service, politics, law. She served as our ambassador to Denmark, U.S. ambassador from 2009 to February 2013. She retired as a partner in the prominent law firm of Williams and Connolly. She was a distinguished trial lawyer and was recognized, and she did practice for 20 years, as one of Washington's top lawyers in Washington Magazine. As ambassador, as you can imagine, she managed U.S. relations with Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands in areas related to national security, counterterrorism, Arctic policy, piracy, international law enforcement. And among other things, when she was ambassador, she organized and co-hosted the 2010 conference on the role of women in global security for the U.S. and Nordic Baltic countries. Her work all resulted in being awarded the Grand Cross of the Danish Royal Order of Dannebrog by Her Majesty Queen Marguerite II. She was also awarded the Distinguished Public Service Award from the United States Department of Navy. That's a whole nother story, but a positive, great thing. And since returning to the U.S. in 2013, she's really focused her efforts on continuing relations with Denmark and diplomacy generally, including NATO countries and other countries. She's actually been at a lot of different election inspection efforts in Europe in particular. And in fact, she was over there recently with the election monitoring of the Republic of Georgia, and earlier several times to Ukraine. In fact, she was there monitoring the 2019 election with Volodymyr Zelensky was elected. So that was kind of an exciting moment, and she's tracked and followed President Zelensky all this time, but was really right there at the beginning of things. She's involved with a lot of diplomatic organizations, and I will also say she's also co-chair of the Ambassadors Circle of the National Democratic Institute. She actually helped create it. So it's a long list of things, including the Meridian International Center, the National Archives Foundation. Thank you for all your help, Lori, but let me say it's a pleasure. I've never had a chance to introduce Lori, so it's a pleasure to introduce someone I serve as a co-chair with at NDI. So Lori Fulton, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. We might have to hope Jim Blanchard never has to introduce me again. But thank you for the marvelous introduction, Jim. I want to acknowledge our very important guests who are with me today. Jacob Isbothesen, got it wrong, Isbothesen.
Very good.
Who is the representative from Greenland to the United States and Canada. Just came to our country in that position, about 4 or 5 months ago. And also Steve Peras from the Danish Embassy. Steve has the title ambassador, but he serves as the Deputy Chief of Mission at this moment. Indeed, it was an honor and privilege for me to be the U.S. ambassador to Denmark from 2009 to 2013 under President Obama. My grandfather immigrated to the United States from Denmark in 1910. He came and lived with his uncle and family in Minnesota, but my grandfather's immediate family all stayed in Denmark. So I grew up knowing I had these Danish relatives and looking forward with excitement every year to Christmas when we would get Christmas letters telling us what the Danish cousins were doing, and when we got gifts from our Danish aunts, including wonderful silver teaspoons with Hans Christian Andersen motifs. So I grew up loving all things Danish, including Greenland and the Faroe Islands. When I had been ambassador for 3 weeks, I went to Greenland for the first time, and it was unbelievable, unforgettable. From then on, I went to Greenland at least twice a year, not including the trips I took to what was then Thule Air Force Base and is now Pitofik Space Base. Because you had to go separately if you were going there. If you look at a map of Greenland, Thule or Pitofik is way up in the north, whereas if you're going to Greenland to visit the Greenlanders, you're probably going to Nuuk, which is farther south and on the west coast. Greenland is the world's largest island. It is mostly autonomous, mostly self-governing, but as part of the Kingdom of Denmark, King Frederik X is the head of state. I want to share with you some of my amazing memories of Greenland visits, hiking around Disco Bay near Ilulissat, watching literally the glaciers break into icebergs, going on a whale tour at midnight one June, watching dozens of humpbacks breach the surface, being at then Thule Air Force Base in January when the sun never got above the horizon, and landing and taking off in a Hercules cargo plane outfitted with skis to visit National Science Foundation's summit camp up on the Arctic ice sheet. There is so much beauty in Greenland, but it is dramatically different from the United States, especially the lower 48 United States. There are no roads in Greenland, no highways. There are, of course, streets in Nuuk and the other cities and settlements, but one gets around Greenland by air, sea, and perhaps dog sled. But Jacob is here to tell you much more about Greenland. So now I would like to have Jacob come up and talk to you a little bit about Greenland.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I am born and raised in Nuuk, in Greenland, but I'm also educated a lawyer from the law school of University of Aarhus. So it actually feels quite good to be here among equal creatures. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and friends from US and Canada, thank you, Ambassador Fulton, for the introduction and for the invitation to participate in today's conversation about our country with this headline up here. It is always a pleasure to be here representing Greenland, a country that continues to spark curiosity, inspire partnerships, and from time to time, even make headlines in ways that we don't always expect. But let me assure you that our focus remains firmly on shaping our future ourselves through democratic self-governance and cooperation with our friends and allies. Our aim is to deepen these ties in ways that benefit our people and the Arctic region as a whole. Greenland is not just a strategic location. We are also a democratic society, a partner in energy development, indigenous cooperation, and regional security. Greenland is an Arctic nation, geographically large, but with a small, strong, and resilient population. And we are very proud people. We are the Arctic part of the kingdom. We are a self-governing part of the Kingdom of Denmark, as we heard, with broad autonomy, and our internal affairs, including mineral resources, trade, fisheries, environmental management, science, and research, to name a few. As the Arctic has gained international attention, Greenland has increasingly stepped into the global, and last year we adopted our 2024 to 2033 foreign security and defense strategy, Greenland in the world, nothing about us without us. And you have a few copies on the table alongside with the chairmanship program for the Arctic Council. But that strategy also reflects our commitment to play a more active role internationally, particularly in the Arctic, based on self-determination, responsible development, cooperation with our neighbors to the west, and indigenous leadership. Our government's priorities include sustainable economic development, strengthening our institutions, expanding educational and cultural ties, and continuing to build meaningful partnerships, particularly with the North American allies. As we face shared challenges and opportunities in the Arctic, including the effects of climate change and geopolitical shifts, we believe that collaboration grounded in mutual respect and understanding is more important than ever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob. I should say we have moved to the table because I'm told that the camera for people who are online is only focused on the table. So if the sound quality is not quite as good, I apologize. But Jacob has spent his life basically working for the government of Greenland, a lot in foreign affairs, but also as a head of the section of ministries for fisheries, hunting, and agriculture. So we have a great, well-rounded Greenlandic representative with us today. He also came to the United States from his last posting as the Greenlandic representative in China. So I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
Now, this brings us to Denmark. Actually, it all started with Denmark. I traveled to Denmark for the first time on my 21st birthday and spent several weeks visiting my relatives in Denmark all around the country. If you look at Denmark on the map, it looks like a small country, unless you're traveling around it in 1970. It's a bunch of islands, a lot of ferry rides, and a lot of hours getting from one relative to the next relative, but all of it fabulous, almost like a fairy tale. And of course, it is through Denmark that the United States has access to Greenland. And yes, the US has offered to buy Greenland a number of times, going back to Secretary of State Seward when he bought Alaska. I might also just comment that we have bought some Danish territories. The American Virgin Islands used to be the Danish West Indies. Aren't we glad to have them? And it was the Danish ambassador to the United States during World War II who realized the benefit to the Allies, the benefit to Greenland, and the benefit to the United States to give the United States military and defense access to Greenland. His name was William Kaufman. And he took the position with our then Secretary of State, Cordell Hull, that he, Ambassador Kaufman, was the appropriate spokesperson for the Danes, for the Danish, because anybody in Copenhagen was acting under duress of Nazi occupation. And so this took a while, but eventually the United States agreed with him. And in April 1941, Secretary Hull and Ambassador Kaufman signed an agreement relating to the defense of Greenland, which granted the United States the right to build military bases, airfields, and weather stations, all of which turned out to be extremely important to the Allied victory in World War II. And since World War II, Denmark has been one of our strongest, most reliable allies across the board. Defense and security, international law enforcement, financial, international law enforcement, and sustainable energy resources. So it is my pleasure to turn the floor over, or the table, over to Steve Pyrrhus from the Danish Embassy.
Thank you, Ambassador Fulton, or Laurie, as we are so pleased to be able to call you. First of all, thank you to DLA Piper for hosting this event. It's a subject very close to our hearts, so we feel in good hands. Also, thank you to Canada United States Law Institute for taking up this interest. It is indeed a very interesting and active, relevant issue right now, especially since the new administration. So I'm being honest here. I think explaining the Kingdom of Denmark to outsiders is a bit complicated. I think only we understand it, or not even us, but it encompasses of Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands, and it is one kingdom. And that is a bit complicated, which is also complicating issues when we talk about it with other partners. We have a long shared history with Greenland. Greenland has been under the Danish crown since 1397 and has been part of the Kingdom of Denmark since 1814. So we share some history. And it's been evolving over time. It isn't there's no blueprint that has been that lasts when you look at the bilateral relations between Greenland and Denmark. It's changed, and it will continue to do so. We've seen the Home Rule in 1979, to self-government arrangement in 2009, to today, where nearly all elements of governance have been transferred to Greenland government, with the exception of judicial, foreign, defense, and security policy. And also in these areas, we work very closely with Greenland. This is how we defined the partnership. It is a partnership, a true partnership, and that's also how we see it moving forward. And let me just end this, because I hope to see a good discussion and many questions later on. The future of the people of Greenland will be decided by the people of Greenland, and that's how we see it also in Denmark. Thank you, Ambassador Fulton.
Thank you. So let's turn to Jacob again, and let's say Greenland has been in the news quite a bit the last 8 to 10 months. But not many Americans know very much about Greenland. So what can you share with us about Greenland? Your whole life has been Greenland. Tell us what is important about Greenland that we should know.
Thank you. First of all, we are neighbors. As has been mentioned, we are strong partners. We have been allies for over 80 years. We share many values. As I mentioned, Greenland is the Arctic part of the kingdom. We are also an indigenous population, which is also recognized in the Act of Self-Governance from 2009, as Steve mentioned, as a people according to international law. And we have our own traditions, our own culture, our own language, and our country is very special, as you mentioned and described very, very fine. We are the world's largest island with 80% covered by ice. We mostly live along the southwest coast, but only along the coastline, because the rest is covered by ice. There's no roads, there's no trains connecting our cities or settlements. We have 78 places where we live, cities and small settlements along the coast. With a small population of only 57,000 people, not 57,000 or 57 million people, 57,000 on the world's largest island with these conditions that just mentioned. And as you said also, if you go above the Arctic Circle or to the Disco Bay area or further north, then it's maybe difficult to fly with a small fixed-wing airplane or helicopter. Then you can go by dog sledge for transportation of people and goods. Imagine that you don't even have cars or trucks driving around the country, so basically like the rest of the world. So we have some different challenges in that sense compared to other countries, and that's what we hear quite often, also from US and from others. Why don't you just do this and that and so forth? But maybe there's logistical and realistic reason to that. So I would say Greenland is a very special place, and as you mentioned, also super important for the whole Western alliance from the Western world. You mentioned it also in the beginning. You mentioned it with the defense agreement from 1941 and 1951 with the later amendments, where our history and also, as Steve mentioned, has evolved together, both with Denmark, with US, from being a colony for many years until 1721, for almost 250 years. So the home rule government was introduced to Greenland, where we got our first democratically elected government and parliament. We made history together with Denmark, where we withdraw from the European Union or the European Community back in 1985. Where people said it is impossible, a small people and Greenland and a territory to Denmark cannot just leave the European Union. But we could, we showed that. We had the political will and power to do so, together with the Danes, where we negotiated our arrangements with the European Union, where we have a huge fisheries agreement, partnership agreement on research and science, and have access to the internal market due to our new status as an associated overseas country and territory to the European Union. That was possible because we worked together, and that was the will of the people after referendum in Greenland. And we have evolved it to the next step, as we call it, with self-governance from 2009, where the main legal difference from the home rule was that we were able to take control over more responsibilities that we could during the home rule government system. For instance, we took over the responsibilities and the legal rights about our resources, the minerals area. Our language was officially was made to the official language in Greenland, and we got some more powers in foreign affairs, and we have the, as I said, the right. I said before, we were recognized as a people according to international law, and we have the right to become fully independent if the Greenlandic people wants to do so, which was not possible before. And all in agreement with the governments of Denmark and Greenland, and they agreed that this is the path that we want to go. And then, of course, culturally, languages-wise, we are very close to our fellow Inuit friends from Canada, especially from Nunavut. And our friends from the Arctic Alaska. Our language, culture, and traditions are very different from European traditions. We have basically the same language and tradition, and also where we, from long time ago, we derived from Mongolia up to northeastern Siberia, to North Alaska, to northern Canada, and to Greenland. So we somehow feel connected also, but at the same time, we also very mixed, especially also in my generation, with mixed marriages between Danes and Greenlanders and so forth. And our whole legal system, our whole political system, our whole administrative system is completely the same as the other Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland, and so forth. So we feel like we are in the middle, geographically, politically, between North America and Europe. And I guess that's also makes us, if not different, then special. That was the short version.
Special, I'm going with special. And Jacob said they're neighbors, and they are. And when I used to talk about Greenland, I often started with a map, but a map looking at the Earth from the North Pole down. And if you do that, you see that Greenland is right there next to Canada. I mean, they're so close together, it's just amazing. I also wanted to follow up a little bit more, Jacob, if we could, with the population of Greenland. 57,000, mostly along the coast in the southwestern part of the country. Inuit. How many live in Nuuk? Nuuk is the capital city. And the largest city.
Around 20,000 in Nuuk, our capital.
And that's where you grew up, yes? And so in Nuuk, when I was ambassador, there was one hotel, the Hans Egede. And we had a meeting of the Arctic Council in Greenland. We're going to talk about the Arctic Council next. The Arctic Council in Greenland, so Secretary of State Hillary Clinton came and other people from the United States cabinet came. And of course, there are like 8 other countries in the Arctic Council. And so we couldn't take up the whole hotel. We could have easily. So we rented a ship. And all the other people from the US delegation were housed on the ship in Nuuk. It was, I think they thought it was quite fun. But today, Greenland is a big tourist attraction. So tell us a little bit about how you think that is going right now for Greenland, and should we all wait a year or two to come?
No, I encourage everybody to go to Greenland as soon as possible if you have not been there. Since we are talking about Greenland, and since Greenland is so much in the headlines at the moment, so instead of talking about Greenland, you should go and visit yourself and talk with our local population and meet our friends and family in Greenland. So you should not wait a year. Just go. We have weekly flights to Greenland all the time, from Iceland, from Copenhagen. And in the summertime from Newark, United Airlines just started their flight summer season. And we also have from Iqaluit in Nunavut, from Canada to Nuuk. And you're right, we didn't have so much hotel capacity. We still don't have compared to all other countries. But I think also it's a good idea because we have also seen other places in the world where you are, and that's the part of the plan for the government of Greenland to diversify our economy. We are highly dependent on fishery and fish products and export of fishery. It's 90% of our total income. And then we are highly dependent on the subsidies from the Danish state as well. So our government wants to diversify our economy from not only fishery, which is a bit unstable if you want to have a long-term planning, because if you want to have a sustainable fishery, you have to follow the biological advice, and the climate change, the stocks goes up and down, and that's not so good. So of course, tourism is one of the things that would be a good pillar to build our economy on, among other things. But we have also seen in other places in the world where you just go full bonanza with tourism, and you have a huge crowd coming, and you're basically have such a big impact and influence on the local cultures and places, or the environment, or the nature, and so forth. So I think it's a good thing that we are maybe taking a step-by-step approach, slowly building new facilities, hotels, services, and so forth. And then we have another, I think, important thing in Greenland compared to, for instance, Iceland, which has seen a huge increase of tourism the last 10 years. That in Greenland it can be very dangerous because we have the Arctic conditions. So you cannot just rent a car and just drive around by yourself, but you need some local guides, some local people, which also create jobs to actually secure your survival. So you just don't go out by yourself. So yes, there's definitely opportunities and challenges with tourism. Not only these things that I mentioned, but also culturally, because it will have an impact on our culture, and as you mentioned, with our Inuit culture and heritage, because if we want to have more tourists, we need a bigger workforce, and basically the unemployment rate is very low in Greenland, so we need foreign workers, typically from Denmark or from Iceland, or maybe from the US or Canada in the future as well, to uphold if we want to have more hotels, more services, and so forth. And then again, with a small population of only 57,000 people, it's also a bit vulnerable, because then how many workers should we increase the workforce with just for the tourism business? At the same time, if you want to have minerals extractions that probably we'll come back to later, and if you want to keep on the pace with that we have, or the level we have with fisheries and fish factories and so on, there's only a realistic limitation on how many workplaces, our 57,000 people can actually fill out if we want to increase and this thing. So that's also something new that our government, that our population needs to discuss among ourselves. How are we going to evolve or develop these different sectors and still maintain our special heritage and culture?
And my knowledge of Greenland is old, so you're looking for you to answer this question some. When I was there, a number of Greenlanders, if they wanted to study abroad, were going to Denmark. They could go to Denmark as high schoolers, they could go to Denmark to college. Perhaps a couple of others went to the EU. Is that still the case? Is it pretty much between Greenland and the Nordic countries?
Yes, we are so fortunately that within our Kingdom of Denmark, we have free access to the Danish educational system on the areas that you just mentioned. Of course, we have a university and vocational educations in Greenland and schools where you can take many educations nowadays, much more than before. But still, typically, if you want to become a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor and so on, you have to go abroad. And typically Denmark, because we have our system set up for many years, but also through our Nordic cooperation, which we also are a member of, we have the opportunity to study in the other Nordic countries. And we hope also here in the US that we can have more focus on, if we want more people-to-people interactions between Greenlanders and Americans and Canadians, that we will be able to make some agreements to open up for universities in US for Greenlandic students as well. And so, yeah, it is still the case that we typically have to go to Denmark to study. And we have here my two colleagues who is also studying, Marie and Malou from Greenland as well, who is at the moment working in our representation as intern and colleague. And both of them are studying in Copenhagen in Denmark. And we, of course, hope that you will return back to Greenland when you are finished with your studies, which also makes a responsibility to us as a government and as a society that we actually make the framework and make it attractive for the younger people to go back to Greenland. Because like many other places, we also have a brain drain in that sense that many young people go abroad to study. And then it is not always easy to attract them to go back and work for either the government or other companies.
So one of the challenges that I faced trying to encourage more Greenlanders to come to the United States or have a relationship between U.S. colleges and universities and Greenland was language. As you said, you have your own language in Greenland. And then, particularly in Nuuk, as students learned a second language, it's Danish. But there's more students learning English now. Yes, Jacob?
Yes, I think we can thank the internet for that, especially you can see it with very young people. Before, we also had challenges of having a steady connection abroad, a stable connection to the internet, but it's getting better. We have submarine cables, we have more satellite connections now. So basically all the young people they are watching YouTube and all kinds of other streaming channels. So they are actually very, very good at English, and some are already now better than English than Danish. So that's a development that we also see, and hopefully that will also be a benefit in the future.
Let's get Denmark back in the loop also, and let's talk a little bit, just start with the Arctic Council, because Denmark, of course, is a member, and I gave Denmark lots of credit for recognizing when it was president of the Arctic Council during my tenure as ambassador, recognizing it's Greenland that is the Arctic part of the kingdom, and so held the Arctic Council meetings in Greenland. So, Steve, do you have anything to say about the Arctic Council and its importance to the US and Canada?
Yeah, thank you, Laurie. I mean, it's actually, it should be Greenland again who had the chair, because the current ambassador to the Arctic Council is actually a Greenlandic colleague. It's of course, it's a shared responsibility, but we host the chairmanship of the Arctic Council currently, and in the Danish chair, or the chair of the kingdom, is a Greenlandic diplomat, actually the former colleague of Jacob. So it's in good hands. No, I think it's evident to say it's a super important council for us, especially for the Arctic people. It's somewhat, Russia is part of it, which also casts some clouds on how much we can do. I have a good impression that in the working groups, they're very active. But on the more political level, the war in Ukraine and Russia's aggression simply makes it very difficult to work with it. I don't know whether you have anything to add, Jacob.
No, I'll just say that you're right, which also goes back to what you said in the beginning, that our relationship, our partnership in the Kingdom of Denmark is evolving. It's not a static thing. And this is a perfect example of that a Greenlandic person can actually be an ambassador on behalf of the Kingdom of Denmark, taking care of the Arctic affairs in that sense, which I think is very, very positive.
In recent years, Denmark has, in fact, this year, Denmark has increased its investments in Arctic security. And could you speak a little bit more, each of you, I think, Steve and Jacob, about those investments, what it means, how it's changing? Because that's part of the importance of this conference. But I, of course, also need to note that, of course, Canada is a member of the Arctic Council also.
A very important member of the Arctic Council, yes, correct. I mean, Greenland has, in many ways, it has a very important strategic place in our shared security sphere. And since the Second World War, Laurie, you mentioned that Henrik Kaufmann signed an agreement on the defense of Europe, of Greenland, with the US Secretary of State back in the Second World War. And since then, obviously, it's been also during the Cold War a very important element in Western security. I think, to be honest, we have also, not just recently, but the early, let's say, not many years back, recognized that we needed to do more when it comes to Arctic security. We all talk about the peace dividend, and I know there's been a lot of criticism from the US side, also from both parties, that Europe didn't do enough. And I think that recognition has entered quite brutally in all of Europe, but also in Copenhagen. We ourselves are now spending quite a lot. This year, I think we'll reach 3.2% of our GDP. And we also agree with the 5% threshold that came out of the summit in Wales. So I think we were getting there. And that part of our equation is also Arctic security. And I think that's very important, and that's something we have given a lot of priority. Just to mention that since January of this year, Denmark has allocated a total of 13.7 billion US for initiative and capabilities that can be used by the Danish Armed Forces to operations in both Arctic and the North Atlantic. So a substantial security investment on our side, also looking at our numbers. But that brings us up to a quite ambitious level of security capabilities in this region. We have collaborated with US since the Second World War, as I mentioned before. We have this defense agreement since 1951, and every year, actually, we meet with the US and our Greenlandic partners to discuss security. So I think it's been for a long time established. It's not something we have to reinvent and to discover how we do it. We have formats to do so. We have meetings, and we have a tradition to do so. So I think it's important. We are doing our fair share together with the Greenlanders, and we need also, of course, the US to contribute to this endeavor. because it is important. And I know that my good friend, our defense attaché, Rear Admiral Jacob Rose, who will talk about this at length later on. He has all the numbers and all the boats and all the capabilities, so please hold your breath for that. But that's what I could mention on this issue right now, Laurie. Maybe Jacob, you have something?
Just very briefly, both for the first and second agreement on Arctic defense, as you mentioned, it has been done together with a close cooperation with the government of Greenland, and we are very glad to contribute in that sense. Of course, as you mentioned, and for many scholars and many years, maybe people have seen Arctic as a low-tension area, but we are also seeing a change in the world, and we recognize the change in the security concerns, both from the NATO side, the Danish side, the Canadian and the US side, at least. So we are also positive to contribute to that, and then it's up to us to remind the parties that we are part of that it should also benefit the local population. So if we are talking about longer runways or more deep sea ports or submarine cables or whatsoever, it should also benefit the population of Greenland, because that would also automatically contribute that we want to engage and want to contribute more actively instead of things that just been decided without us.
On one of my first trips to Greenland, I was a guest of the Danish military, the Air Force, I believe, and the Navy. Somehow we were all going to what was then Thule Air Force Base at the same time. And they had a number of meetings without me while I visited the ballistic missile warning system sites. But I am very aware that Denmark has definitely been part of the Arctic defense. We used to call it Thule Air Force Base as though it was ours. Well, it was a US, Canadian, NATO Air Force Base and a Danish Air Force Base. It is now Pitufik Space Base, but it's the same thing. It is a combination of all of these countries working together, in part because it's way up there in the north. Perhaps only immediately post-World War II military-industrial United States would have undertaken to build that. But now it is the infrastructure for the defense up in the northern part of Greenland, and it is shared by all of our countries. And among the highlights of that particular visit was I got to choose whether I wanted to go on a helicopter ride over, I think, the Thule Peninsula or something with the Navy. I took the helicopter ride. It was just fascinating. But because there were all these muskox. Amazing, hairy, big animals. They're really only like goats, but they have all this hair. And I got parachuted down right next to this herd of muskox. I said, Greenland is an amazing place. But just go ahead with the military a little bit. How are the Greenlanders reacting to the increased security, I guess, talk about Greenland?
As Steve mentioned, and I totally agree, it is important that we have our security in these times. And I think it is also important, and from the Greenlandic side, that we should remember that we are part of the Kingdom of Denmark, we are part of the NATO, we are part of the Western Alliance, and we have been so, as mentioned before, for the last 80 years. Despite of the controversy with the former Thule Air Base, now Pitufik Space Base, and with the whole agreement and so forth, the environmental aspects and other things, I think in general, the Greenlandic people are quite satisfied and also proud that we are contributing to actually keep America secure. The Bidufik Space Base is the cornerstone of the homeland security here in US. It is the first place who will be detecting if missiles or other threats are shot against the US. So it is extremely important. We are an extremely important partner for the US homeland defense and security. And as I mentioned, despite of the last many months, maybe also with the political rhetoric, I think if you put that aside, I think we are in general quite proud that we are involved and included in the new defense agreements with the Danes, that we are upgrading the security because it is also to our benefit. Our Prime Minister was in Fox News for the first time in history in January, stating that our security is your security. It cannot be said more directly. It is so true. And he repeated that, and we're repeating this all the time. We are so interconnected, and we are so tight allies in that sense. And so, of course, it benefits from the security not only to the US, but also for Greenland and for Europe, and historically, where Greenland has contributed during the Second World War and during the Cold War as well. As you mentioned, there has been many possibilities. There still are many possibilities that we have during our defense agreement with the US to upscale or downscale the US presence, military presence in Greenland. And that's what we are having a dialogue on, and wants to have a mutual dialogue on also for the future. So I think in general, the most people in Greenland, and definitely the most parties in our parliament and politicians, but also local societies, can see a benefit of having both the Danish Navy, the Joint Arctic Command, and the US presence in Greenland. If we are talking about ice-breaking things, so we can get our logistical things back and forth for search and rescue and security in general, and what else we can benefit from that. So I think in overall, most people are satisfied with that.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting the Bidufik Space Base. And we would be remiss if we didn't try to talk a few minutes about all the interest in the minerals, the mineral wealth of Greenland, and what it might require to develop those.
I think you're right. It's a very interesting and very important topic. Greenland has many resources, not only living, but also mineral resources in our underground. Very important minerals. I think, if I'm not mistaken, around 39 out of 45 listed critical minerals on the US list, you can find that in Greenland. Usually we say the government of Greenland has given 78 licenses for exploration, but also exploitation to different companies, to different investors from around the world. 23 is given to Canadian companies, 23 to companies from United Kingdom, 10 to Australia, 10 to European Union, and so forth. There's one from US. So if the interest from the US and the private investors in US is so huge and so big and so strategic in the minerals of Greenland, where are all the investors from the US? Most of them are coming from Canada. Of course, Canada has a great experience of mining in the Arctic and so forth. And I think it's important to say that that is also a subject that we want to cooperate with the US. Of course, we want to be a part of the supply chain to deliver critical minerals, for instance, to US, to future processing plants, so we can break the monopoly from China, who has the monopoly on processing critical rare earth elements and so forth, which will be vital for everybody in the future. But it takes time. And we welcome any American interest in our mineral resources that we can develop together based on mutual respect, based on the rules and regulations set out by the government of Greenland and the Parliament of Greenland, which includes a lot of attention to the environmental aspects and for the societies as well. So American companies are very welcome together with the Canadians who are already there.
Steve, any final thoughts about U.S.-Greenland, Canada relationship and what the future might bring?
I think Jacob has, you know, I mean, I think from the Kingdom side, I think we stand ready to have a dialogue as always with our American friends, and this administration included. The relationship between our countries is just too important, too long, and too deep to get you know, affected severely by the current let's say hiccups. So we are ready to do business. I think it's evident that the Greenlanders want to have more American interactions, and we would like to see more of that also on the security field. So by all means, thank you.
Jacob? Final thoughts?
No, I agree with Stig, and I think we have been talking a lot about Greenland and the opportunities that we have. So I don't think I have more to add, and just remind that, of course, when we're talking about security, defense, trade and investment, infrastructure, tourism, scientific cooperation, not least education, environmental protection, and so on, we are more than ready to work together with our American friends, and we'll be happy to do so, as Stig mentioned, in the future.
We always so agree with each other.